At the Piggly Wiggly, we proudly support our local farmers and bring you the best they have to offer, all at cost plus 10%. When you shop local, you reinvest in your community. Remember, buy local, shop local. Piggly Wiggly, local since forever.
Trojan Auto Parts of Troy, home of Napa Know-How. Stop by and see owners Mike and Melissa Kilcrease and their Napa Know-How team with over 100 years of combined experience. We're the only locally owned parts store in Pike County, and we're fully stocked and ready to serve you. We pride ourselves on being your go-to parts store, not only for the simple items, but we specialize in those hard-to-find items as well. Trojan Auto Parts, the right part at the right price at the right time. Napa, a name you've trusted here in Troy since 1945.
Know-how, Napa Know-how.
Have you seen an increase in your insurance premiums or significant change in your insurance coverage? Let Sandbeck Insurance offer you a better plan to suit your business or personal needs. Sandbeck Insurance offers many lines of insurance, whether it's home, farm, or auto insurance, work comp, business, or health and life policies. Sandbeck is here for you. Call or visit our Troy, Enterprise, or Andalusia office today. Sandbeck Insurance, where we take pride in taking care of your insurance needs.
A personal touch. A high level of trust. Whether it's checking and savings accounts, personal or business loans, or our local friendly service. That's what Troy Bank and Trust customers expect. But now we offer more. Free identity theft protection for our new and existing customers, protecting your family's time, money, and good name from identity theft. Because protecting your identity is now a big part of our identity.
At the Piggly Wiggly, we proudly support our local farmers and bring you the best they have to offer, all at cost plus 10%. When you shop local, you reinvest in your community. Remember, buy local, shop local. Piggly Wiggly, local since forever.
We've been doing business the right way for 31 years, and now we've approached a year at the all-new Bill Jackson Ford. But don't take our word for it. We feel our customers express it the best.
I would recommend Bill Jackson to friends and family.
Environment was just friendly.
It's a short drive from anywhere.
At the Piggly Wiggly, we proudly support our local farmers and bring you the best they have to offer, all at cost plus 10%. When you shop local, you reinvest in your community. Remember, buy local, shop local. Piggly Wiggly, local since forever.
Trojan Auto Parts of Troy, home of Napa Know-How. Stop by and see owners Mike and Melissa Kilcrease and their Napa Know-How team with over 100 years of combined experience. We're the only locally owned parts store in Pike County, and we're fully stocked and ready to serve you. We pride ourselves on being your go-to parts store, not only for the simple items, but we specialize in those hard-to-find items as well. Trojan Auto Parts, the right part at the right price at the right time. Napa, a name you've trusted here in Troy since 1945.
Know-how, Napa Know-how.
Have you seen an increase in your insurance premiums or significant change in your insurance coverage? Let Sandbeck Insurance offer you a better plan to suit your business or personal needs. Sandbeck Insurance offers many lines of insurance, whether it's home, farm, or auto insurance, work comp, business, or health and life policies. Sandbeck is here for you. Call or visit our Troy, Enterprise, or Andalusia office today. Sandbeck Insurance, where we take pride in taking care of your insurance needs.
A personal touch. A high level of trust. Whether it's checking and savings accounts, personal or business loans, or our local friendly service. That's what Troy Bank and Trust customers expect. But now we offer more. Free identity theft protection for our new and existing customers, protecting your family's time, money, and good name from identity theft. Because protecting your identity is now a big part of our identity.
At the Piggly Wiggly, we proudly support our local farmers and bring you the best they have to offer, all at cost plus 10%. When you shop local, you reinvest in your community. Remember, buy local, shop local. Piggly Wiggly, local since forever.
We've been doing business the right way for 31 years, and now we've approached a year at the all-new Bill Jackson Ford. But don't take our word for it. We feel our customers express it the best.
I would recommend Bill Jackson to friends and family.
Environment was just friendly.
It's a short drive from anywhere.
When I was there. They've got good facilities. Good morning and welcome to Today in L.A. My name's Mike Amos. He's Bill Rice Jr. and it is Tuesday, the second day of June. And how's things been going, my friend?
Things are going fine.
Let's see, we're in arm's length this morning, aren't we? Bill Rice Jr. Somebody's looking for I've got mine here.
Well, things are going fine for me. I don't know about the rest of the world. It's about as scary as I've ever seen it in my days. But you notice that I am not wearing a hat today. So for the first time in probably 5 or 6 months, I got a haircut this weekend. Thank you, Raymond Ledford. And
you look fairly civilized today, my friend.
I apologize for having to wear that hat for so long, but I couldn't get a haircut. I would have been breaking the law if I went and got a haircut. So I obeyed my guidance and finally got a haircut. And little Jack got a haircut too. And Mom is so happy that she can see the face of her 2 boys.
Yeah. Little Jack, does he have red hair like you?
Strawberry blonde, yeah.
Strawberry blonde. I bet he's a cutie. You have to bring him up here one day. And of course, I've already seen that sweet little girl you got. Now, she starts to school, doesn't she?
She'll be in 3rd grade. And
3rd grade.
She went to dance camp at Shebang yesterday, so that was probably the first time in months that she's been around
Rocky Top,
girls.
You'll always be home, sweet home to me.
She said,
good old Rocky Top. Do they dance to Rocky Top?
Well, yesterday she made the decision that she's going to become one of their cloggers. They teach all the styles of dance, but they're most famous for their clogging girls.
Yeah, exactly.
And so good luck, Maggie, as she becomes a clogger.
And yeah, exactly. And Troy is a clogging town. You have towns that are majorette towns and dance towns, but and of course, clogging's dance too. But I don't know if any town in Alabama or maybe in this part of the country that emphasizes that type of dance.
I don't either. And we've always had great cloggers. We're going to talk about Pat Dye later. And we had Dan Smith on the show the other day. I remember when Troy first got a Dixie Boys World Series. It was a big deal for Troy, and they had a big banquet welcoming all the teams at Troy Elementary School. In the cafeteria? You were probably there.
I was definitely there.
And you remember who the speaker was?
Pat Dye.
Pat Dye did a great job. Probably 700 people there. And the main entertainment was these 12, 13, 14-year-old cloggers. And they were unbelievable. They blew away Pat Dye, and I guarantee every boy that was playing baseball that was in Troy had a crush on those girls.
Well, they asked him. They asked Pat Dye enjoyed them so much. The main theme song was "Put Me In, Coach." That was their super song for cloggers. And he told them, he said, "Hey, man. Y'all don't need to hear me. We need to hear them again." And he brought them back out. And of course, I remember Pat Dye being here for that. And Pat Dye, ladies and gentlemen, died on Monday morning, and funeral services for him are yet to be announced. But one of the all-time great coaches in America was Pat Dye. Anybody don't think Pat Dye put Auburn's football on the map, you're wrong.
Yeah, that's what he put it.
Chuck Jordan was great, but hey, listen, Pat Dye made you think national championships.
He flipped the state. Alabama was dominating forever, and after about 2 years of Coach Dye being at Auburn, that was not the case at all.
And tell me this, now let me tell you something else too. Not only did Alabama get Pat Dye from Alabama, Auburn got Pat Dye from Alabama, but they got the best defensive coordinator in the country at that time, former Alabama linebacker, Wayne Hall.
That's right.
Now, let me tell you this. Wayne Hall was a great, at least he scared me to death when being an Alabama fan. I hated to go up against Wayne Hall's defense because they were mean as Hades.
They were known for their great defenses and great defensive linemen. I think that's what put Auburn on the map.
He and Coach Dye worked so well together, and of course, you know, he hired another friend of ours named Bud Casey. He was on their staff. Larry Blakeney was on that staff. There was just Steve.
Jack Crow was on
Jack Crow, yeah, Jack Crow was on that staff, and
We've been doing business the right way for 31 years, and now we've approached a year at the all-new Bill Jackson Ford. But don't take our word for it. We feel our customers express it the best.
I would recommend Bill Jackson to friends and family.
Environment was just friendly.
It's a short drive from anywhere.
Troy Cable Security Wi-Fi doorbell camera allows you to answer the door from your smartphone when you are at home, at work, or on the go. When a visitor presses the button, Troy Cable Security sends a live video feed to your smartphone so you can see, hear, and speak to the person at your door. With the doorbell camera, you can have your porch light turn on automatically when it detects motion at night to create the appearance that someone is at home. You can view video clips so you can always know who stopped by when you are out. Troy Cable Security. You love them, protect them.
A personal touch, a high level of trust. Whether it's checking and savings accounts, personal or business loans, or our local friendly service. That's what Troy Bank and Trust customers expect. But now we offer more. Free identity theft protection for our new and existing customers, protecting your family's time, money, and good name from identity theft. Because protecting your identity is now a big part of our identity.
Here at Bill Jackson Chevrolet in Troy, we've been doing business the right way for 31 years. But don't take our word for it. We feel our customers express it the best.
Been honest in everything we've discussed with them.
When they say Jackson satisfaction, they really mean it.
The Jackson satisfaction is real.
We've been doing business the right way for 31 years. And now we've approached a year at the all-new Bill Jackson Ford. But don't take our word for it. We feel our customers express it the best.
I would recommend Bill Jackson to friends and family.
Environment was just friendly.
It's a short drive from anywhere.
Good morning and welcome to Today in L.A. My name's Mike Amos. His name is Bill Rice Jr. and it's Tuesday, the second day of June. Mike Amos is on the phone from Grayton Beach, Florida. Good morning. How you doing?
Hey, morning.
Of course, we start our show off with a sad note, especially, well, people that love football, not just an Alabama guy, not just an Auburn guy, but I'll tell you one thing. Pat Dye, of course, who died yesterday, and so many people grieve over what a great coach he was and great player at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And
people forget that he was a great player.
And of course, went on and coached at Alabama under Coach Paul Bear Bryant.
You know who got him his job at Alabama?
Bill Rice.
Mm-hmm. My dad. But they played football together at Fort Benning after they briefly tried to play pros. Became real good friends, and Pat Dye told Dad he'd like to get into coaching, and Dad wrote a letter to Coach Bryant and said, "You need to hire Pat Dye as fast as you can." The words he said, "He reminds me of you."
Yeah.
And then a couple of days later, Coach Bryant called Dad and asked him some more questions, and a couple of days after that, Pat Dye was interviewing for the job, and the rest is history.
Of course, he was there, what, 8 or 10 years at least at Alabama. Of course, he was. Well, when I was telling you, I was recruited, of course, invited up a couple of times, to games and so forth. I don't know how hard I was recruited, but I did go and sit on the bench when Joe Namath was injured against North Carolina State.
God.
And my wife was one of the people I went up there with. She ended up being my wife. But
I bet that impressed everybody. About Pat, look at this guy with this beautiful girl.
Yeah, but this guy.
Why didn't you go there solo and then put a Bama Bell with you?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. But we had a good time. At Alabama, and of course,
that was the game. The guy hurt his knee the first time.
The guy that recruited me was Ken Meyer, who later on was a big pro coach for the Jets, very good recruiter. But the guy from Fort Fort Deposit, Alabama. Richard Williamson also was recruited.
He was a good friend of Dad.
Area.
He played with Dad, Richard Williamson.
Sure was. And, of course, Pat Dye not only became a household word at Georgia as a player, but later on as an assistant coach at Alabama. He and Coach Bryant were real close. A lot of people think Coach Bryant wanted to give the job to Pat Dye.
Pat Dye later poo-pooed that, but I think he would have been on the short list because Coach Bryant did really like Pat Dye because they were very similar. He was a fantastic recruiter. He recruited some great Alabama players. You talk about what a fantastic player he was. You know, Dad played on these. Back then, they had the military bases all had football teams that were full of former college and pro players. And he said Pat Dye was the baddest player on that team. I mean, like the toughest.
Yeah.
You know,
played linebacker and guard. Yeah. Of course, he played with a pretty well-known football player named Fran Tarkenton. And of course, also his brothers.
He called him Francis.
Francis Tarkenton, and then later on, let me tell you the other names later on. After Francis Tarkenton, you're a sports writer trying to keep up with all this. Tarkenton came a quarterback named Larry Rakestraw. And listen to this. And then the next one, the third one, was a guy named Preston Ridelhuber. That was a quarterback at Georgia. Preston Ridelhuber was the third quarterback after the great Fran Tarkenton.
Wasn't Francis Tarkenton, didn't he have a lot of Doug Flutie in him? Couldn't he just scramble around?
That's what he did. He was one of the great scramblers, not only, he held a record for the most yards passing for a long time in the NFL. He was a great player, no question about it. And, of course, Dye played with them and, of course, became a legend in Georgia football. And then, of course, as a coach,
coached at Alabama, then he got a head job at East Carolina.
He turned that program around.
He turned East Carolina around.
He was a perfect example of what Division 1A football. They went from Division 1 AA to Division 1A. And I think they had 6,000 students on their campus when they moved to 1A. Now they have 20,000.
Wayne Bolt was one of his players.
Yeah, Wayne Bolt was one of his players.
At East Carolina.
And
then he went to Auburn.
I still can't believe he went to Wyoming for a year.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, it was a head job.
Behind that he, for some reason, he got crossways with the people at East Carolina, or he thought he was going to another coaching job, a bigger coaching job, and that fell through. He said, "Uh-oh, now what do I do?" And he got that job at Wyoming.
And you think of the people he put around him, and of course, as we mentioned, Jack Crow was his offensive coordinator, and they were up and down. A lot of people said nobody ever received a coach in the head coach's face as he did. But Steve Crow was a very effective coach that actually won a national championship at Livingston.
Yeah.
He was an option coach.
He's old buddies with J. Jeffcoat.
That's right. No question about it. He was one of the.
Larry Blaney, of course, he served under Dye for many years. You want to hear his comments. Larry Blaney is quite blunt about it. He owes everything he has as a football coach to Dye. Blaney coached for the Tigers from 1977 to 90, 4 years under Doug Barfield, and then 10 under Dye before becoming the head coach himself at Troy. When the NCAA began investigating Auburn for its violations of the early 1990s, Blaney was famously caught in the middle of it. But Dye went to bat for his former assistant with Troy officials, and Blaney kept his job. He retired in 2014 with 8 conference championships and a school record 178 victories. Blaney said he saved my career twice. Number one, he hired me from Doug Barfield's staff, and number two, he stood up for me when I needed him after I got the Troy job. He really meant a lot to me and my family. I think his legacy is much the same as Coach Bryant. Brought the same thing back to Alabama, same kind of guys, small-town guys, farm guys, guys who understood hard work. But Coach Dye built this thing from the ground up. It was a struggle when he got here. There had been a lot of good people who had tried to keep it where it needed to be, but he was able to take it, move it to the heights that
key, the one major thing that stands out about Pat Dye was when he took the job at Auburn, the guy asked him how long would it take to beat Alabama. How long would it take? He said 60 minutes. And sure enough, and then the key was Pat Dye was able to have the game moved from Birmingham to home and home at Auburn, and then at Alabama home and home. And it just turned Auburn's program completely around. Their program started gelling and it became a national power.
He made a prescient point when that happened. Of course, it was huge to Auburn, and it helped Auburn immensely. But he said this is going to end up helping Alabama and Tuscaloosa, and he was right about that, too, because Alabama soon moved all their games to where? Tuscaloosa.
That's right, yeah.
And they did about 3 impressive stadium renovations. And Alabama now arguably has the finest football stadium in the country.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have happened if it would have happened later.
Yeah, Coach Bryant asked him in an interview when was he said, Pat, you were trying to move this game to I can hear him right now. Pat, you're trying to move this game to from Birmingham to Auburn. Listen, we got a contract until 1988, and we're going to play the game in Birmingham. And it was all politics, and Pat Dye said yes, and 2 years later, the game was moved to Auburn, and now the rest
he said, we're going to play the game in 1989 in Auburn.
Yeah, that's right.
And they did.
And
I was there. I was there, and that was the loudest stadium in the history of sporting events in the world, I'm sure.
Well, let's admit it. Auburn was second fiddle to Alabama all those years.
Yeah, it was.
And basically that was the end of Legion Field. That broke Birmingham's back and Legion Field's back when that happened.
And like Rice said, it's the best thing ever happened to Alabama football in Tuscaloosa. You remember we used to have to play 2 or 3 games in Birmingham to appease the Birmingham politics and all the rich folks, and when that happened, it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to Alabama, or they would be still playing some of those games at Legion Field. They probably wouldn't ever tore down the west stands, though, at Legion Field. At one time...
I'll never forget when I was a freshman in college, my best friends were, Neil Green and then Richard Calhoun, and, I would get on the buses with them. I know Bill did this because he was in a fraternity at Alabama, and leave the K house with Neil and all his fraternity brothers, and we'd head to Birmingham on the bus for the football games, then come back.
Yeah, that's the way you did it. You got chartered buses from your fraternity, and 1 or 2 of them, I think. And those were fun trips, though. If you had a chartered bus and dates and your buddies, so I always kind of liked the games in Birmingham. I liked the Iron Bowl in Birmingham, and then that stadium being split 50-50, that was a completely unique atmosphere, which, like we see in the Georgia-Florida game and the Texas-Oklahoma game, and I guess Army-Navy. But it was inevitable those games were going to go to campus, and it was good for both programs in hindsight.
Well, I can't count the times that I drove to Birmingham and to that game. Of course, it was from Alabaster on. It was a bumper-to-bumper traffic. It was a traffic problem. And you know what? Alabama football also had a lot to do with Highway 231 being finally 4-lane through Birmingham, You used to have to go through Alabaster. It used to be rough. But the things I remember about Legion Field, the old games, Alabama games at Legion Field, was you could go down to field level. Friends would ask me, said, I'll see you at field level. We'll be around the 40-yard line at field level. And we'd sit there, and you could almost reach out and touch Coach Bryant. He'd be leaning against the post and smoking a Chesterfield. And he'd just be laid back, and the Tennessee band would be behind us, and it was football at its greatest as far as the atmosphere goes. The old Legion Field, and Mike likes to make this quote. Mike, what stood out to you more than anything going to a game at Legion Field?
Parking?
Yeah, we would leave our car, and we really did not know for sure if our car would still be there when we got back.
But it always was, wasn't it?
and we parked behind these houses and
yards and you'd pay them, but you didn't know for sure if it'd be there when you got back. Yeah.
That's right, and it was a long walk. Some of these, unless you knew what you were doing, it was hard to maneuver very close to the stadium. So more or less, everybody had to park within almost a mile from the stadium. And
you said that Pat Dye memory. You went to some recruiting trips to Alabama games when you were in high school. I went on some to Alabama and Auburn when I was in high school, only because I was best friends with Charles Bradshaw.
Sure.
By Alabama and Auburn.
Yeah.
And so I remember going on a recruiting trip with Charles to the Auburn-Nebraska game. I think it was in Pat Dye's first year at Auburn. Nebraska was, at the height of their powers then. They were awesome. And Nebraska destroyed Auburn that day. I mean, their offensive line was pushing Auburn back.
They had a guy named Remington, a lineman. This was a lineman that stood out. You remember that?
But I remember going on the field before the game with the recruits, and Pat Dye would talk to all the recruits super nice, remembered me and Dad. And then after the game, though, we went with all the recruits and talked to Coach Dye or listened to him. I was so impressed by how he handled that beating. He spun it. He said, well, we got it handed to us today, but that is the team we saw today that we are going to be very soon.
Yeah,
Nebraska.
That's right.
And he was right, but he was so impressive as a young coach at Auburn, and I just had the strong vibe that there's no way this guy is not going to be ultra successful.
All right, when you're talking to somebody at the post office today, and you need to have your mask on, it's very important not to. Forget your mask when you're going out today, going to the grocery store or going to the post office. And this is a premier? Well, not a premier, but this is
the top of the line. This
is to keep you from inhaling germs, and at the same time, it is to keep you from giving your germs to somebody else. So it's very important to wear a face mask this morning when you're away going to public places. And also, hey, it doesn't hurt right now to, look here. Now, I'm not very good at anything, but I can sure put on a glove. People are fixing to laugh about this now. Let me make sure I got it exactly right, but...
well, look, I'm going to wear your ring while you do
the key is to put the glove on and see how easy it was. And you can have a glove on, whatever you're going to touch, you need to do it with your glove hand, or if you want to take both of your hands, and this is the one that's going to be close, probably worse than the rest of them, but I'm see, I'm having trouble with this one. But as long as you can get your thumb in, you're in good shape. But make sure to put gloves on and also your mask on.
Why did Dye never get another coaching job after 92? When he retired, he was only 52 years old.
Well, he was 52 when he retired at Auburn?
That is surprising, yeah. You're younger than I am right now.
The Eric Ramsey and the NCAA violations, is that what called it?
You know what? You're exactly right, Mike. This is something that evidently he might have been told that. I can't even remember him even interviewing for a job.
I don't think he was lobbying for any, or he wasn't.
But Mike, he was older than 52, though, wasn't he?
He was on the payroll at Auburn for about 20 years.
Yeah, that's right. Had an office there.
He was born. He's the same age as my father, late father. So he was born in 1940. He would have been 52 years old.
Yeah, and of course.
Don was born in a place called Blythe, Georgia. Where's Blythe, Georgia?
It was up near the Georgia campus. He had a couple of brothers that were good players too.
That's right.
And
he played at Georgia from 1958 to 1960. Then he played with the Edmonton Eskimos from 61 to 62. His career record is 153, 62 and 5. He was 7-2 and 1 in bowl games.
When Coach Bryant coached at Alabama and brought in this young Pat Dye to coach there, he brought in some other guys that were pretty good too, and one of them was Richard Williamson, who played at Alabama from Fort Deposit.
Mal Moore.
Mal Moore was another one that was
Bill Oliver.
Bill Oliver, brother Oliver. And see, a lot of these coaches ended up going to Auburn, if you think about it. And then, of course, another one that played at Lanier High School in Montgomery and was a longtime assistant at Alabama, Jimmy Sharp.
Jack Rutledge was there.
Jimmy Sharp, Charlie Pale, Jack Rutledge, the old governor, Jack Rutledge.
He brought the coach in from Tennessee that was a coordinator.
Ken Donahue, the defensive coordinator. Doesn't this bring back memories?
He also had Goose Tree.
Yeah, Coach Goose Tree was the trainer. And of course, Sam Bailey. Do you remember Sam Bailey? Mm-hmm. And Connie Lassie. Oh, I saw Connie Lassie, Coach Lassie at the game. And then this name here, does this name here ring a bell? Clem Griska.
Yeah, I know.
You remember Coach Clem Griska?
Yeah.
And everybody told me when we were up there now, people say, Mike, Alabama didn't want you to play for them. Well, let me tell you this. Back in those days, you could recruit as many players as you wanted to. And so I jumped on the wagon. Coach Meyer wanted me to go to the game. And I remember one time I went with Coach Meyer invited me. And then I went when Jimmy, my guy from Fort Deposit, with Rich Williamson. But but they said don't shake Clem Griska's hands because his right hand was he was wounded during World War II somehow, and I didn't even think about all I could think about was I'm not supposed to shake his hands because he didn't have a hand to shake at the time.
Would Coach Sadler push y'all as recruits back then, the college coaches? Was he?
Yeah, he did. All right, let me tell you that he did, and later on, I'll tell you what happened. Of course, Marvin Barron. I coached on that staff with the coach Jim Tompkins, Coach Jim Tompkins, and the first guy that was being recruited heavy at Troy was Marvin Barron.
I know.
Who was an outstanding player, and and while he was recruiting Marvin Barron, and listen to this now, and spending the night with Miss Barron on Montgomery Street, and her cooking him supper, and her cooking him breakfast. This was when Marvin was a freshman, and he would be recruiting a guy named Mike DeBose. So after after Pat Dye recruited Marvin Barron, he recruited a linebacker out of Opp named Mike DeBose.
And he later recruited a running back named Wilbur Jackson.
That's right. Later on, went to Ozark and hired and signed Wilbur Jackson.
Who was the first high school African American signed by the University of Alabama.
That's right. Dexter Wood came out of Ozark and they played at Alabama. At one time, Alabama had 3 kids from Ozark starting in the starting lineup, and Joe Kelly as the backup quarterback.
He also recruited Leroy Cook, who was a good outside linebacker.
Out of Abbeville. See, these small towns, so exactly.
Pat Dye was a great recruiter, which I guess you got to be a successful coach.
No question about it, and all of those came from small town Alabama.
I'll tell you, Alabama fans need to appreciate what Pat Dye did for Alabama football
Isn't it amazing how easy it was to list all these coaches that coached with Coach Bryant? And then another one, he hired a Yankee, Mike, that turned out to be a pretty good coach. He's the NFL coach now, but he hired him to run his offense at one time, didn't he?
Yeah, Howard Snellenberger.
Well, Snellenberger, of course, was on his original staff, and everybody knows what happened to Snellenberger. He went on and won national championship at Miami. And but he got his start under Coach Bryant. He played for Coach Bryant at Kentucky. Did you know that? Snellenberger. And there's a couple of other pretty good players that played for him at Kentucky. One of them became the oldest player to ever play in the NFL, and also led the NFL in career points scored. His name was George Blanda. You ever heard that name?
Yeah, Dad played with him briefly with the Houston Oilers.
That's right. And he was a place kicker and so forth, and backup quarterback. But and then of course Coach Bryant also coached another guy at Kentucky named Babe Pirelli, who became a great NFL quarterback after that. Let me tell you a little story.
Well, let's talk. Pat Dye. What was probably the biggest thing he did in his first couple of years? He recruited a angry, shy, young phenom out of Bessemer named Vincent Bo Jackson.
Vincent Bo Jackson.
And one of the best testimonials I've read about Coach Dye was one by Bo Jackson's daughter, who said Pat Dye changed the type person Bo Jackson was. He was angry for some reason, when he went shy, had a bad stuttering problem, and the player that left Auburn was completely different.
No question. Bud Casey, who was on this show with me for 8 years, and we miss Bud today. He would be right there with them. There's going to be a giant reunion of great coaches and players that played at Auburn.
Think about it. They might have to do it on down the road, do like a memorial service, because with the COVID, I don't know how many people you can get into the church.
Well, all of these great players that played at Auburn, and let me just say this: Auburn changed their whole personality. Now, don't get me wrong, Shug Jordan was a great coach. He had Jimmy Seidel and Tucker Frederickson and a guy that was pretty darn good named Pat Sullivan, and he also brought Sullivan on his staff at Auburn for a long time, along with a young coach named Larry Blakeney.
His brother played at Auburn, didn't he?
Yeah, he played now, but he didn't play under Dye. He played under Jordan.
Jordan, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, he was a good player at Auburn.
Yeah, no question. He was captain of the team.
Yeah.
But Dye put together a great staff of young coaches, and co-offensive coordinators were Pat Sullivan and Larry Blakeney at Auburn. And then, of course, after Blakeney left, Sullivan, stayed at Auburn and became the offensive coordinator. But Auburn's whole personality changed. You could tell that they weren't afraid. They weren't awed by Alabama.
I'll tell you what Coach Dye did. He did the exact same formula that Coach Bryant would do when he'd go into a program like from Texas A&M to Alabama or Kentucky to Texas. Those guys that played for Coach Dye went through some hard, tough practices, and they were physical. Exactly. And like Coach Blakeney said, these were small-town kids that weren't highly recruited, but you could tell in a year, Auburn didn't win a ton that first year, but you could tell they were going to be good. And by year 2, they had beaten Alabama, and by year 3, they were competing for a national championship.
Yeah. I remember the first game that they played, the young man, the Comet from Jasper, stole the show in the second half, but the whole first half, Auburn was wearing Alabama out. This is the first game between Bryant and
it was the biggest game ever, 2015.
And you were crying like a baby, and you had your head in my lap, and your sister Rebecca was giving you a hard time, and you just would. But in the fourth quarter, you were able to sit up and watch Alabama and Lenny Patrick, the great Lenny Patrick, make 2 unreal runs for touchdowns to win that game.
That was 3-15.
But I think everybody, even us, as just as fans, knew then that, hey, from here on out, look out. Of course.
Dye was 1-1 against Bryant, I believe. He was 2-2 against Perkins, and he was 3-0 against Curry. He was 0-3 against Stallings. He never beat Stallings.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Those games between Dye's teams and Perkins' teams, every one of them was a classic. I mean, they all went down to the wire.
Let me tell you something that's very, very true, and I'll argue this point with anybody. One of the things that Coach Bryant and Coach Dye had in common, Coach Bryant and staff was scared to death of Coach Bryant.
Yeah.
And Auburn's staff was scared to death to Pat Dye. They were dominant, like they were dictators. I mean, let me tell you something. If you went to the bathroom, you might have to ask them if they could go. I mean, he ran the program completely, and it's played. Now I say scared, but let's just say had the great respect for him.
Yeah.
And Coach Bryant, I've heard this say many times. His coaches were scared to death of him. You know, hey, that's where a lot of leaders are. You know, and I'm sure MacArthur and some of the great generals. In wars,
I'll tell you an anecdote.
Officers were scared to death of them.
Coach Bryant told his staff one day that they were have a meeting at 4:30 or 5 the next morning, and there was one of these coaches. You probably just named him assistant coach. He said, "Well, I'm going to go home. I might oversleep and miss that meeting." So he just slept on a couch in the.
That's right. That's right, because Coach Bryant ran that program, and so did Pat Dye at Auburn, and. He was a great one. And I knew Pat Dye.
I'll tell you one thing about Dye, his locker room speeches and post-game interviews and his television show, the replay show, those are classic TV.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if they lost. Oh, my God. And they would interview Dye, and they'd interview all the players in the locker room. They were the only coaches show that would interview players like that.
Yeah, it was a good show.
Watching guys in tears.
The reason I know so much about Coach Dye is Bud Casey and I were best buddies, and I've heard him tell all kinds of stories about it. And like you said, you were exactly right about Bo Jackson. And we used to say, Bud was on the show, and I said, Bud, tell me how it was to coach Bo Jackson. Was Bo Jackson hard to motivate? And I said, did you have to motivate Bo Jackson to play hard? He said, every day. That coach, Bo Jackson was so good. I've seen a
documentary on Bo Jackson, who's an icon, a legend now. And Bo Jackson tells Bud Casey stories. You could tell they did not always get along.
They call it blood on the saddle.
That's what Bo Jackson talked about. It said Bud Casey was always talking about blood on the saddle.
Yeah.
And Bo, I think he had the attitude that I know I'm good. Just give me the ball on Saturday. I'll show you I'm good. I don't need to be having my butt run to death Tuesday through Thursday.
Look at the tailbacks, Bo Jackson.
I always wonder, if Bo would have just stuck to one sport, trying to play both sports, and then of course he had the more, the one of the tragic injuries, very similar to what happened to Tua with the hip, and it makes you wonder if he would have just focused on one sport. I think he would have been in the Hall of Fame in one of them.
Let me tell you another very true statement. Yes, Mike Amos knows a little bit about this, I promise you. Another thing about Bo Jackson, he played in a wishbone offense.
Until his last year.
Auburn comes out in a full wishbone set, and then what they do, got two backs here, then they got the fullback here and the quarterback. Well, here Jackson has to line up at the left halfback.
Yeah.
All right. Most of where a left halfback's going to either run the dive straight at him or go out and block in front of him. And they ran the veer offense instead of the wishbone at Auburn. They ran the veer offense. And then they ran the...
they ran the wishbone this first
They ran
year.
They ran the wishbone. And for 2 years, he was in a set where he was lined up at left halfback. They pitched it to him or ran the option to him to the right. All right, 2 years later, when Dye came, when they went to a different offense, he was in a I backfield where you could pitch it to the right, pitch it to the left. They didn't know exactly which way Bo Jackson was going to go. And his great 2 years were as an I backfield tailback. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seemed like they would have had him in
That's right.
Herschel Walker, in the eye.
Exactly. And ran that eye for 4 years, but they were in that wishbone where he would wait for a pitch, and every now and then they run him on a dime.
You look at Bo Jackson's NFL career, he only played a very few games, but his per carry average, I think it's the highest in NFL history. He averaged about 6 yards a carry in the NFL, if you can average 3.9 yards in the NFL, you're considered good.
I mean, a lot of people consider Jackson the greatest athlete of all time. I think that's what was actually voted on, and he won that. But, I mean, my big thing was, he tried to play baseball, and he was never going to be a 300 hitter in baseball. I mean, he had tremendous power and was a great defensive player. But
I don't know why you say that. He was a heck of a hitter, Mike.
Well, he struck out a lot.
Yeah, but he struck out a lot.
Yeah.
But the thing is I don't know how he got that in his head to play baseball over football.
Well,
if he played football in the pros, I don't think you ever would have. If he would have just played one sport, he never would have had that injury, I don't think.
I know the story. He's a man of principle and stubborn pride. His last year at Auburn, he was playing baseball, and he took a trip to Tampa Bay to talk to them about being the first overall pick of the NFL draft with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he said asked them, he said, now I can do this and not jeopardize my amateur eligibility in baseball, right? And they said, yeah, no problem. Well, he went down there and talked business with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, comes back, and it turns out somebody heard about it, and they told Bo that he had done something that was no longer eligible to play baseball. Well, he said he told the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if y'all draft me, I ain't coming. And sure enough, they went ahead and drafted him the first overall pick, and he did. Yeah. He said he went and played baseball.
You know, I know he played for Kansas City, but did he ever play for Chicago White Sox too, or was that?
I think later he did. He did. That's why he lives in Chicago now, I think.
And I'll just say this, that they caught on early, like Bosworth, the linebacker from Oklahoma that was supposed to be the greatest linebacker.
Baseball numbers in '86 he hit 207, '87 he hit 235, '88 he hit 246, 1989 he hit 256, 1990 he hit 272, 91 he hit 225, 93 he hit 232, and 1994 he hit 279. He was a 250 hitter, Major League
Gosh,
Baseball.
how many years did he play Major League Baseball?
He started in '86 and finished in '94, but he didn't play. Let's see, in '92 he didn't play at all because of the hip surgery.
You remember how a lot of times he'd strike out and he'd grab that bat and break it, try to do that. See what
his best year was in '89 when he was an All-Star. He hit 32 home runs with 105 RBIs.
Yeah, and of course
his numbers are very weak when it comes to baseball. 141 home runs, 415 RBIs, 250 average. His best sport was football. It always will be.
I'm going to put you on hold and take this caller here. Excuse me. Good morning, you on Today in L.A. How you doing?
Hey, Mike. Will Matthews.
Will Matthews. We're talking about Pat Dye this morning. We'll be talking a lot about him and some of the other things going on. Let me put you on hold and bring Mike Amos back in here. For some reason, this is not as easy as it used to be. There we go, right there. Good morning. Got Will Matthews calling in from Ozark or Dothan this morning.
I'm at my office. Mike, there's two people I thought about this morning. Bud Casey.
That's right.
He loved Pat Dye and Wilbur Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Now, see, Pat Dye recruited Wilbur to Alabama. And, that story will be told. In fact, there's going to be a book written about Wilbur.
Oh.
And probably a movie.
Yeah.
But that's in the works.
Yeah.
But as far as Coach Dye, he recruited down here heavily the 8 years he was at Alabama.
Oh, no question about it.
We've been talking about that, what a great recruiter he is, all the fantastic players he signed from our neck of the woods, and most notably Wilbur Jackson, who is a historic figure in Alabama football.
Of course, he recruited Marvin Barron out of Charles Henson, who was a great player, and until he had that, he was in that same car wreck with Jeff Rousey, and that hurt both of them's career. But, of course, Wilbur Jackson, but also a guy named Mike DeBose the next year from Opp. That was a great player. We were talking about how he recruited a lot of small-town guys. How about a guy named Stedman Shealy out of Dothan, or Tommy Wade out of Dothan?
How about, let's just say this. How about Ellis Beck?
That's right.
And Dexter Wood from Ozark.
That's right. And Wilbur Jackson.
Wilbur.
They started on the same team from Ozark, Alabama. They started at one time in a game.
And their coach was an Auburn guy, Tom McClendon.
Wow.
That's right, the high school coach.
Coach McClendon had played baseball and football at Auburn.
Yeah, I knew Tom McClendon too well.
You know, Wayne.
But at the time, and I don't want to be ugly about this, but at the time Auburn was just terrible. I mean, it was a bad. They had a bad program.
Yeah.
In the mid late '60s.
But let me say one thing too, though. They had three of the greatest running backs of all time starting in the same backfield. This was before Pat Dye came to Auburn. And those three guys, can y'all name them?
Yes.
Andrews, Cribbs, and Brooks. All of them became great three of the greatest running backs of all time. Played at Auburn.
In one backfield, amazing.
Yeah. All right, Will, excuse us. I didn't mean to break you up. Go ahead.
That's all right.
But it's amazing, though, how Alabama would go, and Coach Dye would go to the small towns, like going to Abbeville and recruiting Wayne Cook from Abbeville.
And he had a knee injury, but they said he would, if he hadn't had that knee injury, he would have been something.
No question about it. Of course, Dave Edwards from Abbeville went to, I want to say went to Auburn.
Now, he and Dave Edwards and Tom McClendon were best friends.
Yeah, Yeah, they both were from Abbeville.
You know, another point we want to make about Coach Dye is he was one of the all-time great guests on the Paul Feinbaum show. You know, him and Paul would get into it. Yeah. But anytime Pat Dye was going to be the guest on the Paul Feinbaum show, it was a must listen. You had to listen to it.
Well, and he had such a great voice. They used him for an announcement. How about this one right here? If it don't say Osmos on that yellow tag, believe you me, you don't want it. You remember that?
How can you not remember it?
Him and Jimmy Rain used to put together those advertisements.
There's a very good article in the Dothan Eagle this morning about Jimmy Rain and Pat Dye. And Pat Dye drove Jimmy Rain out into his pasture and showed him a tree. They transplanted part of the trees that got destroyed, timbers. And there's a tree growing. He said, that's where I'm going to be buried.
Oh.
So that's where they're going to bury him.
Yeah. Good. Well, he was an old farm boy, and he never stopped being a farm boy. He loved to bird hunt. That's one of the things he and Coach Bryant had in common was they loved to hunt, and they did a lot of hunting together. And back then, Coach Bryant's closest friend was later on the father-in-law of Rusty Gibson here in Troy. But they would go to his plantation. The old Ziegler's planned, of course, this guy owned Ziegler's meat company, but he and Coach Bryant used to go to this guy's farm or plantation, and they'd spend the whole week hunting quail.
That's how Dad knew him so well, is when they were stationed together at Fort Benning playing service football. That's all Dad and Pat Dye did is hunt and fish together. Yeah. Dad used to be.
Do you know the story of how Pat Dye came to Alabama?
Well, I just told it. It was my dad recommended him to Coach Bryant. What have you heard?
Of course, Bill Rice Sr.
This is what I heard. Pat Dye had bounced around. He'd been in the Canadian League. He'd been in the Army. Played some football in the Army, that type of thing. And he needed a job. And called Coach Bryant and asked him if he knew any of his friends in the coaching thing that would hire somebody and, whatever.
Hire a Georgia guy, one thing.
Get your ass down here and you got a job. So he did.
Nope, that's close. But Pat Dye tells this story in his book, In the Arena, which is the same story my dad told me is, he wanted to get into coaching. He was finishing up his 2-year stint in the Army.
Right. Right.
And his best buddy was my dad, and so he said, "Can you get me in? You think Coach Bryant would talk to me?" And Dad said, "Heck yeah!" And so Dad wrote him Coach Bryant a letter, and the famous quote from that letter was, "Coach, he reminds me of you." And then a couple days later, Dad gets a phone call from Coach Bryant, which is weird, and says, "I want to talk to you about this Pat Dye." And then Pat Dye, he went over for an interview a couple days later, and I think there were some other people that had gone to bat for him too, but I think my dad was the main one. And you know what I say, Mike? Think if my dad hadn't done that, how the rest of history in this state would be different. Because I don't think if Pat Dye never goes and works for Coach Bryant at Alabama, Pat Dye never becomes the head football coach at Auburn, and this power never flips.
You know, Richard Williamson.
When he came to Alabama, when he came to Auburn, he's hired some Alabama people with him and brought them with him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no question. You know, I can tell you some of those guys. Mike Hall was one of them. You know, you remember what a great defensive. You know, whatever happened to Mike Hall, he was a great defensive coordinator, and you know, he was in the house building business at one time in Auburn.
Yeah.
But
Wayne Hall.
Wayne Hall, excuse me.
Mike Hall.
And how about Brother Oliver? Bill Oliver became a great.
Definitely didn't coach at Auburn.
He coached at Charles Henderson Middle School.
Yeah. Well, you talk about Bill Oliver coached at Auburn. You know, he was a player on your dad's team.
He was in his class. Yeah.
And he was an outstanding coach. How about Charlie Pale now, former Auburn, Alabama little guard? He later on became head coach at Florida. And, you know, there's just a history of that you could talk about players that Coach Bryant and that coached for Coach Bryant and Coach Dye.
Well, Coach Dye, you know, he was an all-time great. And Mike makes an interesting point. You know, he retired at 52 years old. He could have coached another 18 years. But he had a run there at Auburn where I think they won 4 SEC championships. They could have won a couple national championships.
Yeah, you said 8, Mike. He didn't win 8 championships.
Oh, that was Larry Blakeney he was talking about.
Oh, Larry Blakeney, yeah.
Larry Blakeney won 8 championships.
Yeah, and from different conferences.
Auburn was the.
What the end of Pat Dye was keep it down home cuss.
That's right.
We're going to job after that.
Yeah, that's right.
But in the 80s, Auburn was the dominant team in SEC football.
But that's the thing about it.
You think Bobby Bowden would have gone 0-3 against Pat Dye like Bill Curry did?
No,
I don't think so. You know the thing about that job. Somebody said
the stupid president said we had to interview Bobby Bowden.
Yeah, that's right. I had to call him, ask Coach Bowden would he come in and interview, like he hadn't already proven himself.
Yeah.
Alabama would have won 3 or 4 more national championships if Bobby Bowden had been their coach.
Well, it kind of worked out because eventually they got Gene Stallings, who's underappreciated. He had a 4-year run that was fantastic. But then he left. He could have coached another 5 years. He couldn't stand the president and the athletic director is the real story there.
Exactly.
Yeah, Bob Ross.
I can't stand him either.
Well, Dye and I'm not going to put Perkins in here because I think Perkins was not. He was a little bit different. But you look at Stallings and you look at Dye and you look at. There were a few more that you could say were a lot like Coach Bryant, but Dye stood out more than anybody, and of course, he created a great legacy.
I think Stallings and Dye were, in different ways, the closest to Coach Bryant.
Yeah, exactly. And
give Perkins credit, though. I mean, Perkins was the head coach of the New York Giants and took the Alabama job.
Oh yeah, now he would. That's how he got it. He was a successful pro coach. He had those steel eyes and never smiled and all that, but he was the guy that took Coach Bryant's place.
Perkins,
I don't know how good it would have been if Coach Bryant would have got Pat Dye to come back to.
Perkins was instrumental in getting Bill Belichick in the NFL football and Bill Parcells.
Why did he really?
Yeah, that's the coaching tree goes through Ray Perkins of those people.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about this morning before we go on break. Coach Pat Dye died yesterday in a hospital in Atlanta.
You know, his son is in Atlanta, and he's a top sports agent.
He actually died with hospice in Auburn.
Did he? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know where I heard the.
He was in the hospital in Atlanta. You're all right about that.
Yeah.
But he died in Auburn, is what it said.
Well, his legacy will live on, and there'll be a crowd of folks there to pay homage to Pat Dye. And I through Bud, I got to know him pretty well, and Pat, let's just say this: Pat Dye was a dominant individual, just like Coach Bryant. He was the guy, and then he hired his staff. But he was a dominant guy as a coach, and he dominated guys from the last 30, 40 years or 50 years after being a coach.
Yeah.
How long would that have been, maybe?
He was always relevant, even after he was out of coach, probably because he was considered a powerful force behind the scenes in Auburn. I don't know how much of that is true.
He still had power.
He stayed in the news and instrumental. Then he raised Japanese maples. He had a little
big farmer.
People would come to his house and have these hunting trips like Max does, People
one of his best friends was a guy named Jimmy Seeley, and Bud had a beach house right next door to Jimmy Seeley when he was here at Troy. And I got to know Jimmy Seeley, and Jimmy Seeley played with Coach Pat Dye at Georgia, and was a great man. Just so many. Frank Orgel, you remember that name, Frank Orgel, Mike? He was another.
Pat Dye's nephew coached at Troy for several years, Jim Dye.
Yeah, Jim Dye. But Frank Orgel is still living, and he was from South Georgia, and they were all big buddies. Frank Orgel was on his staff at Auburn, and also played with him and was on the staff at Georgia. But those names just shoot out at you, these famous coaches, and of course, Charlie Pale and people like that, Jimmy Sharp, all those guys left Alabama to go into coaching in their own right, and all of them became great coaches.
I think at least 45 of Coach Bryant's former players and or assistants became head coaches somewhere else.
But if you look at his staff at Auburn,
and Pat Dye is one of those, of course.
You look at his staff at Auburn, and they were all very good. We're going to take a short break, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by Premier Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram trucks. You want a deal? Nobody beats a deal from our good friends at Premier Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep.
A personal touch, a high level of trust. Whether it's checking and savings accounts, personal or business loans, or our local friendly service. That's what Troy Bank and Trust customers expect. But now we offer more. Free identity theft protection for our new and existing customers, protecting your family's time, money, and good name from identity theft. Because protecting your identity is now a big part of our identity.
Troy Cable Security makes it easy to stay aware and stay in control of your home wherever you are. User-friendly interface allows easy navigation for lights, locks thermostat, video, and garage doors. Never worry about leaving your garage door open or the front door unlocked. Your mobile app can send alerts to your phone for alarm and no alarm events. Know when your children arrive home from school with video response. Make sure your home is powered by Troy Cable Security for ultimate access, awareness, and protection.
If you've had an accident or just want a new look for your vehicle, come see us at Troy Paint and Body, where we do it right the first time. Our staff has more than 100 years combined experience and can handle repairs and paint work on any make or model. We also offer a lifetime guarantee as long as you own your vehicle. Our 24-hour towing service means we're here when you need us. Troy Paint and Body, where we may meet by accident, but you'll be glad we did. So come see us at Troy Paint and Body, located on South Brundage Street in Troy beside the post office.
At the Piggly Wiggly, we proudly support our local farmers and bring you the best they have to offer, all at cost plus 10%. When you shop local, you reinvest in your community. Remember, buy local, shop local. Piggly Wiggly, local since forever.
Trojan Auto Parts of Troy, home of Napa know-how. Stop by and see owners Mike and Melissa Kilcrease and their Napa know-how team with over 100 years of combined experience. We're the only locally owned parts store in Pike County, and we're fully stocked and ready to serve you. We pride ourselves on being your go-to parts store, not only for the simple items, but we specialize in those hard-to-find items as well. Trojan Auto Parts, the right part at the right price at the right time. Napa, a name you've trusted here in Troy since 1945.
Have you seen an increase in your insurance premiums or significant change in your insurance coverage? Let Sandbeck Insurance offer you a better plan to suit your business or personal needs. Sandbeck Insurance offers many lines of insurance, whether it's home, farm, or auto insurance, work comp, business, or health and life policies. Sandbeck is here for you. Call or visit our Troy, Enterprise, or Andalusia office today. Sandbeck Insurance, where we take pride in taking care of your insurance needs.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
We're back on the air.
Back on the air, just...
It's breaking news that Notre Dame and Navy will move their game from Dublin, Ireland to Memorial Stadium in Annapolis, Maryland to play Labor Day weekend. So that game has now been officially set.
Again, we're very conscious of the virus that's taken the whole world and has killed a lot of people. What is the national number now, Mike? Do you know?
I can look it up. The numbers were down a lot more yesterday. That's 2 straight days, so there's only 650 deaths. So that's a really good sign that deaths are starting to come down.
Is that in the United States?
We used to average around 1,500 to 1,800 deaths a day. So hopefully people are getting, the medical treatment, and there's more, things that can help, for us, helping people live with the coronavirus now than ever. There's more research and more medicines you can take. Also, I was going to mention this. This is a very strange situation here, and you hope he's not injured bad. But Henry Ruggs III, the great Alabama player out of Montgomery, Robert Lee, was injured helping move his family yesterday. And was rushed to the hospital. Has got a deep thigh injury. It was a cut that he actually had happen while moving a trailer for some of his family members. So hopefully it's not career, a career situation. Moving furniture or something, the trailer just kind of pinned him against a car.
Oh, boy.
And or a wall or something is what his dad said. He's pretty much okay, about to go out there and see him a little bit. He has an open wound on his leg and is on crutches right now and can't put a whole lot of weight on it. Why in the world would this guy who's a millionaire now be helping family move in a trailer?
He might not be a millionaire yet. He probably hasn't signed his contract. So
he probably has.
You're talking about, a guy that's, a first-round pick in the NFL draft and stuff like this happens and, could jeopardize his career.
No question.
And then huge news out of Clemson, the star wide receiver out of Phoenix City that played for Jamie DeBose, Justin Ross, who destroyed Alabama in the national championship game 2 years ago, has a spine injury, and his college career could be over. So that's a huge target.
Man, oh, man.
That Trevor Lawrence will lose next year, and Dabo Swinney said that there's no player that's ever played football again after having this surgery.
Oh, boy. Man, oh, man. Sorry. That is sad.
He's a great player, yeah.
Of course, Troy players have not necessarily reported, but those that are in school right now are going to start back to school, can now practice football. At least Troy has approved that. And not with coaches, but with strength.
Did y'all talk about Roger Schultz's son signing?
Who?
Yeah, we talked about it.
Who y'all talking about?
Roger Schultz's son committed, not signed, but committed to play for Troy, and everybody knows Roger probably.
No question about it. And Roger was a great player at Alabama. Of course, lived here in Troy and coached here.
His son's a big kid, 6'3", 285. I'm surprised he didn't get any SEC offers.
Yeah, it surprises me too. And of course, I know him, and I've known him ever since he was a kid. He's been a big kid ever since he was born. I tell you, he was a big kid. Well, we're talking sports this morning as we.
You know who played in that 1989 game? What do they call it? The mountaintop game in Auburn.
Roger Schultz.
Roger Schultz. You know, the quarterback was a young man out of Hamilton, Alabama, Terry Hollingsworth. Yeah. And that Alabama team was one of the most prolific offenses in Alabama history. But they went over to Auburn, and Coach Dye found a way to defend them.
They could beat Reggie Slack.
Reggie Slack, yeah.
It would have taken the San Francisco 49ers to beat Auburn on that day, I think.
Of course, Coach Dye always had some great quarterbacks, and one of his quarterbacks was one of his favorites was a young man out of Cedartown, Georgia. Do you know who I'm talking about? Quarterback out of Cedartown, Georgia.
They played where?
Played at Auburn.
What was his name? Not Bergdorf.
It was,
you talking Jeff Berger?
Jeff Berger. Coach Bryant loved Jeff Berger.
Coach
Dye. What'd I say?
Coach Bryant.
Oh, excuse me. Coach Dye loved Jeff Berger. And Berger stayed in trouble more than any quarterback probably has ever played.
Pat Dye, he fired a shotgun in the air at a fast food restaurant one night. Didn't hurt anybody. But Pat Dye said he was going to suspend him or not let him play in the next game, for a quarter or so. I think Reggie Slack came in, was his backup on the first snap of the game. He dropped the snap. Second snap of the game, here comes Berger.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
So his suspension lasted one play.
Coach Berger, one of the reasons Berger got in trouble was he went dove hunting and with a strong Auburn supporter, and he got in trouble for going on that dove trip. And I think a friend of mine out of Enterprise was on that plane too.
Yeah, I went to Dye's final game. His final game was 1992. Alabama blanked Auburn 17-0 in Birmingham. Of course, I was the Iron Bowl, and Alabama won the national championship that year. But I remember being at that game, and Auburn played Alabama tight through most of that game. But that was his final game as a college football coach in 1992. That's hard to believe.
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, Antonio Langham intercepted a ball and ran it back for a touchdown that won that game, really. Same thing he did a couple weeks later in the SEC championship game against Florida.
Exactly right. Won that game, too.
I mean, Don went over 150 games and was inducted in the College Football Hall of Fame, so that's a great honor.
No question. And
if he would have coached to 65, how many would he have won? Yeah. God, he would be way up there.
Yeah, I mean, 52 is really young.
And I'll tell you something about Pat Dye, though. But nobody could have done there and could have actually. I don't know if he was fired or he was just asked to retire. But his legacy lived on, though. You know, he had an office there, and he still called a lot of shots, I would think. Of course, he and Housel were good friends. Who was AD for a long time. And
how about Auburn's defense in 1988? The defense only gave up 7.2 points a game.
And then some of those great defensive linemen.
They had the Rocker boys.
Yeah, they were great players.
Quentin Riggins, a linebacker.
Yeah.
Their defenses were always stout. Just real physical, fundamental football team. Not a lot of flash, unless you count Bo Jackson runs, and then they had Brent Fullwood that was almost as good as Bo Jackson.
And I think I'll tell you something else too. And Coach Blakeney told me this a long time ago. You got to trust your head coach, and I'll tell you this: Auburn players trusted their head coach, and like we talked about earlier there's no question who was running the show at Auburn. But again, even after he retired, he had all kinds of respect from every length of the Auburn It's
wondering, if he had bad blood with Georgia, after being at Auburn for so many years and having so many battles. But, at 52, Georgia hired, Ray Goff and, they hired Don in as coaches. It's kind of amazing that Don never got the job at Georgia. He was a player there and from the state.
Yeah, it was really amazing.
I'm kind of surprised he never got that job.
That right there, I tell you, there was something that we just don't know, because you're right, he would have been a great coach at Georgia.
The NCAA must have said, you cannot hire Pat Dye, I guess. Is all
well,
there must have been a show call.
We don't know that, though. We don't know that for sure.
I know. I'm speculating.
But something like that could have happened.
Blaney was able to keep the Troy job and stay at Troy, so maybe there wasn't. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, it's just unreal. You could write a book, and I'm sure there have been several books.
Well, here's the other scenario I've heard, Mike, is that Vince Dooley could have come to Auburn, and then Pat Dye could have gone to Georgia.
Yeah.
Flipped the coaching jobs.
We're going to come. We're going to come right back, but before we go on a commercial, I want to do this for Pat Dye. War Eagle. The Auburn Tigers, under Coach Pat Dye, have been victorious today. Auburn is going to win the football game under Coach Pat Dye, and War Eagle will say that in behalf of the family of Pat Dye, who, and of course, that Auburn family is huge, and
Let me make a point, Mike, before we go to break, that I think before he left, or soon after, Auburn Stadium went from 58,000 when Chuck Jordan was there, maybe smaller than that.
It probably was smaller.
To 85,000, which it is today. Much bigger than Bryant-Denny Stadium, which sat 60,000, and then 70,000, bigger than Legion Field. And the enrollment of Auburn University doubled, I think.
Yeah.
And became much bigger than the enrollment at the University of Alabama. And that is Pat Dye right there, folks.
He made them believe. He made them believe. I'm a big thing about I believe. I think it's two of the best words in life is I believe. I believe in Christ. I believe in my family. I believe in my team. I believe in people that helped me become the man I am today. I believe. And I believe I'm the best, and that's exactly what Pat Dye did. He made Auburn believe, and of course they've got a great program today. Anybody that says Auburn doesn't have a great program don't know anything about football, but they have a great program because of Pat Dye.
That's another good point, is that Auburn's program has stayed relevant and good ever since
That's right.
Kind of like Alabama, they've had some down, inexplicable years, but they've also had a lot of really good years. And for the most part, since Pat Dye's left, Auburn has been a national football power.
No question about it.
You got to look at the overall record. I mean, Alabama dominates everybody in overall record, but only has a 10-game advantage on Auburn. So that'll say something right there.
And if you look at from, say, the 70s when Pat Dye took over, up until now, I bet it's almost better than Alabama's. What do you think?
Well, I mean, Tuberville is the reason why he won 6 in a row.
I would think Tommy Tuberville and Pat Dye would have been friends.
People want to, elect him as senator. I just don't get it.
Well,
I mean, as an Alabama fan, I live in Florida now, but it would be
hey, Mike. Look, I'm wearing it.
As a true Alabama fan, it would be hard for me to vote for Tuberville.
You're exactly right. And if you're a true Alabama fan, you don't want Auburn to win even in tiddlywinks. A real Auburn Alabama fan doesn't want to see Auburn win anything. But the same way, Auburn fans don't want to see Alabama win anything.
I'm not the typical Alabama fan then, because I just want Alabama to beat Auburn. But it doesn't bother me that if Auburn is good and wins every game they play except Alabama. I kind of like it that the state has two dominant programs.
You don't hear that much.
I'm not like that. When Jameis Winston brought Florida State back on that last drive and beat Malzahn for the national championship, I was more than happy to see that happen.
Yeah, because a win there would enhance Auburn's program. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And of course, listen, I got some of my best friends too. I work right across the street from here. They're as strong Auburn fans you'll find anywhere. But hey, I still, if you're an Alabama fan, you're an Alabama fan. If you're an Auburn fan, you're an Auburn fan. But you know the word.
When Alabama loses to Auburn, I've shut down social media. I don't listen to sports radio. I don't pick up a paper for at least a good week.
And whether or not people believe this or not, the sun will shine the next day. And there will still be a Christmas. How many times have you said that? But you know, at Christmas, then Auburn fans start giving away their tapes to everybody for Christmas and all that, and they'll have that to look at for the rest of their lives.
The worst thing about an Auburn fan, I don't care what anybody says. I mean, out there in the audience listening. As soon as they win that Iron Bowl, they're at the T-shirt place at Books A Million or whatever sporting goods store. As soon as that place opens, to get the T-shirt and the score of the game, to wear that everywhere they possibly can for the next year.
And it's the same way if Alabama wins too. You know, the word that other than I believe about Pat Dye, that meant a lot to him, I believe. But mutual respect. If anything, Pat Dye gave Auburn mutual respect, and there's no question about that. Any Alabama fan doesn't respect Auburn's program, they don't know what they're talking about.
What was program your record against Auburn when he was at Alabama?
He was 3-0, and Auburn never scored a point in the 3 years Dad played.
Never scored a point?
Yeah, they shut him out.
That's some bragging rights right there.
No, that's kind of misleading. I mean,
never scored a point?
Their defense was good.
Freshmen couldn't play, so they beat them 3-0 Dad's sophomore year, and I can't remember the junior and senior year they blew them out. But yeah, and I think the next year Alabama also shut them out too. So if you look from 1959 to about 62, you'll see that Auburn didn't score.
And I'll tell you right now, look at Auburn's program.
Did y'all fight over that national championship ring? How was it determined which
Yeah,
brother
no, who got that, man? Who got that?
It was Bobby got it, but I got some other things. So you know that it was all the different things were divided up. But Bobby is bigger than me, and the ring actually fits him, and it doesn't fit me.
Well, I tell you what, I was a little boy in Troy, Alabama, wanting to hear this. He had hit and knocked down by Bill Rice at the 14-yard line of Auburn, and Alabama will take over on downs. Alabama will win the game as Coach Paul Bear Bryant grabs the youngster from Troy and lifts him high off the ground across the way.
I'll brag about Dad. I probably did too much, but his senior year, they won the national championship, went undefeated. Against Auburn, the last regular season game of the year, Dad had 3 sacks in that game and 10 tackles. Yeah. And they didn't even hardly pass that much, 3 sacks. And that was also the week that my brother Rush was born. So he came down to Troy, Beard Hospital, watched Rush be born, then went back and played a football game and had 10 tackles and 3 sacks. And that.
So did y'all all get Alabama on the Bryant scholarship?
No, we didn't. None of us went on the Bryant scholarship. Dad wrote checks. I guess we could.
Surely you got some aid, didn't you?
A buddy of mine, Rob Simmons, his dad was Jim Simmons, played on the '71 national championship team. He went to Alabama on the Bryant scholarship.
If you need it, it's available. Yeah. And then there's been hundreds of people that, and then I guess we probably could have, but Dad just didn't. Actually, Rush and I went on ROTC scholarships for a while.
Yeah. See, that's the bad thing about Auburn was that when you went to Auburn, you had to take ROTC regardless of whether you were a football player or not. You had to wear uniforms. Did you know that, Mike? It was required to go through ROTC. That means you had to make up your bed tight. You had to sweep out and mop your floors. I'm talking about every day.
Well, how many?
At one time, there was a requirement that all male students go through ROTC.
Well, Dad went through ROTC. That's why when he got cut by the Houston Oilers, he got a commission. He was the 2nd lieutenant in the Army. Pat Dye must have done it too, because after he played 1 year of Canadian Football League, he was a 2nd lieutenant. at Fort Benning, the Doughboys, they won 2 national championships.
Exactly.
Service ball championships at Fort Benning.
Yeah.
You know who one of Dad's neighbors was at Fort Benning? General Colin Powell.
Are you serious?
And his best buddy was Pat Dye.
Well, you know, people tell me that your dad could have gone a long ways in the military. He was in the Guard and was a major or colonel or what?
He ended up a lieutenant colonel, but you know, Dad's he's gonna say what's on his mind, and he's, as you know, he's not very politically correct. So
I think Christopher Joel Amos is a lieutenant colonel now.
That's right.
Well, he is
Troy, Alabama.
He is a great officer and a great human being.
He'd be a good one to write an article on. He's gone a long ways, no question. But again, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the great Pat Dye, and you know, he was my hero. I mean, he's one of the guys that I remember when I was in high school. I wanted to go to Alabama. Everybody did, you know.
Let me tell one more.
Ended up at Troy and was glad I did, you know.
When else am I going to tell Pat Dye stories? Might as well tell them now. Dad, when they were practicing for the Doughboys at Fort Benning, which they didn't really take that seriously, but one day somebody, their linemen, Dad and Pat Dye were linemen, somebody, you know, when somebody moves and flinches and everybody stands up and relaxes, well, one of the linemen did that, and some defensive lineman fired off and busted that guy after he'd already relaxed. And that's kind of a cheap shot, right?
Sure.
And Dad, you got to know my dad. He, of course, he had words with that guy right then, and they almost got into it. Dad said the next play, Pat Dye fired off on that guy, knocked him on his butt, and just started beating the...
You mean the coach?
No, Pat Dye on this player that cheap shot.
Oh, yeah.
Pat Dye did not like it that guy did a cheap shot on his teammate, and he made sure that he was going to pay for it.
At Georgia?
No, at playing for Fort Benning's...
Oh, Fort Benning. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Team,
I got you. I'm sorry. You're right.
That goes to what Dad said about Pat Dye, that he was a bad hombre on the football field.
No question about it. He was a hard-nosed guy. He was the epitome of the type players that Coach Bryant recruited, and then he was the epitome of the type coaches that Coach Bryant would want on his staff.
These young coaches, they're coaching players. Well, these young coaches are tougher than the players.
Yeah,
those players don't want to mess with those.
Exactly.
Young.
My favorite Dye memory is when they tied Syracuse in the Sugar Bowl, and every single Syracuse fan and coaching staff sent him all those ties for.
Yeah, I remember that.
For tying instead of going for the win.
I remember that well. You're exactly right. But of course, hey, he brought a lot of joy to Auburn fans across the country for many years.
The only thing Dye didn't do is win a national championship. You know, it's still hard to believe he did, and all those great players and all those great teams. That's the only thing that he's missing on his resume was the national championship.
That's right.
And I'll be honest, that's the only thing Larry Blakeney was missing was the national championship.
But you know, Pat Dye got a couple of them at Alabama as assistant coach, so I don't know if he does have national. I bet he had 3.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just talking about as a head coach.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Think of these guys here. You know, you think of Pat Dye, and of course you think of Coach Bryant. You think of Snellenberger.
I mean, do Auburn fans look at Pat Dye and praise him and believe he was better than Shug Jordan, or?
Oh, I would think so. Shug Jordan was a great coach, Dave. Don't get me wrong, but I would think Pat Dye was a much more dominant coach. I used to watch Coach Jordan's team practice, and of course he had Sullivan and Beasley, two of the great. Probably maybe I'd say Pat in college football. I believe the tandem of Sullivan and Beasley was probably one of the greatest of all time because they were really, really good. But of course, Alabama had Scott Hunter, who wasn't bad. But Shug Jordan's teams beat Alabama until Sullivan and Beasley's senior year, and that was with Johnny Musso, and Alabama beat them 34-7. And everybody that and Auburn fans everywhere.
Well, you know, think about this. We're talking about alternative history. Auburn wins the national championship in 1957. That's when Dad's a senior in high school being recruited. That's the year Coach Bryant comes from Texas A&M to Alabama. The year after that, what if Coach Bryant had not come back to Alabama, and then Auburn, which has just won the national championship, they probably would have, they were dominating the state in the 50s. They would have dominated the state in the 60s, don't you think?
That's right.
Coach Bryant put an end to that in a hurry, but...
You remember one of the great players at Texas A&M when he coached at Texas A&M was John David Crow. You remember John David Crow was on Alabama
John
staff.
David Crow, the Snake, and Broadway Joe.
That's right,
He turned boys into men.
That's right. That's right. But he later on coached at Alabama. Ladies and gentlemen, of course we're going to go off there in a minute, but again, our tribute and our prayers and thoughts goes out not only to the family of Pat Dye, but Auburn fans all over the country.
I want to tell you one more.
And mutual respect. I mean, I really like Pat Dye.
Coach Dye spoke at an Auburn club at the Holiday Inn when I had the Troy Citizen newspaper. Dad went out there and spoke to Coach Dye. He hadn't talked to him in years, and said, "Hey, how you doing?" They were happy to see each other. He said, "My son has this newspaper. Would you give him an interview after this?" And he said, "Oh, of course I will." And so he spoke to the group, and then after he spoke, we went in the Holiday Inn, had a steak, and I bet he talked to me for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Gave me an exclusive interview, and so just a class gentleman, too.
And those Auburn folks.
I met him with Coach Blakey several times at practice, and he would come watch a lot of Troy's practices. And I also met him at the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame banquet a few times over the years up there with Dad. And he was always telling stories.
No question about it. Great man. Pat Dye is dead at the age of 80. Hope you've enjoyed our show. We're going to come back on again today at 1:30, and we'll see you tomorrow. We got Max Howell coming in tomorrow, but we'll probably have some interviews with some Auburn folks later on. Of course, the family from Enterprise, Alabama, Mike, could really tell some stories about Pat Dye.
Yeah, the Thompsons.
The Thompson, Jim Thompson, and his brother, and that whole family loved Pat Dye, and rightfully so. We'll see you tomorrow.